views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
This show's audio was via a Skype call.
Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy Riddle and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Dorothy Riddle and Steve Kramer.
Hello, listeners. My name is Steve Kramer, and it is great to be with you for Spirit Fire Radio, and also great to be with my co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hello, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. Glad to be here.
I am so glad to be here. This is quite the auspicious show, is it not?
It's our last show.
Wow.
Spirit Fire Radio.
It is. For now, let's just say, but yes, for this season, it is certainly our last show. It's been such a journey, and here we are, arriving at this last show. Wow. So welcome, listeners. We are going to sort of take a special topic and tease it out. We have talked quite a bit for the last 2 years, or it's probably been 3 years now, Dorothy, if you really look at a time frame. We've done 2 seasons of the radio show together, and we have often talked about esotericism and the ageless wisdom. And we thought it might be a really fun idea to talk about applying that wisdom to our everyday lives. Certainly that was, as this collaboration took form, and Dorothy and I came together, and we thought, well, how are we going to, what are we going to discuss, and what is this radio show going to be about? Both of us felt that practical spirituality was something that we cared quite a bit about, and purposeful living. And both of our organizations have got their roots in the ageless wisdom. And so it's embodied those teachings of ways to make spirituality practical, ways to give your life purpose. And so we thought we'd really go into that for an entire show. So I look forward to it, Dorothy.
Me too, Steve. And to start us off, I thought that we could go back to a quote that we've used before from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
That's got to be my favorite quote. We're not.
Well, I think it's really important. It underscores the fact that we know from quantum physics that we are part of this huge cosmic energy field, and that we ourselves are waveforms within that, although we think of ourselves as being tangible physical beings. But we have a lot of space in us. We have anyway, we are energetic beings, and what the ageless wisdom says is that we exist sometimes in incarnation in these bodies, and sometimes discarnately, simply as souls or spirits, and that our primary identification is with that energetic one life. So we are primarily energy. We are primarily that spiritual being that is right now in a human body having experience here on Earth.
Mm. And well, just to sort of give it a bit of a context too, Dorothy, as we talk about the ageless wisdom, what I sort of love is that not only do we have access to this wisdom, but sort of we are the embodiment of it. We are the living collective embodiment of this one life of the initiating will that said, manifest, spirit in form. And so not only do we have access, and not only do these teachings inform us and talk quite a bit, at length about how are we a human being having this experience? What is the architecture of that? How is it built? But it also says that you are all of that, which I love. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, and just to take a step back for people who are not used to the terminology, ageless wisdom refers to an ancient body of metaphysical teachings that underlie or are the foundation for all of our religious and spiritual traditions. If you have examined any of them, for example, the Golden Rule in Christianity, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. We find that same saying reflected in so many different traditions. So it's those common threads through all of them that are what the ageless wisdom is about. And it within its teachings, it focuses on the energetic structure of the universe, how consciousness evolves, how we develop our relationships with each other. And to me, one of the things that is so critical, or that I've taken from this that has been very helpful to me, is that our job is not to somehow, push aside the physical and become enlightened. Our job is to remember who we are. We already have that wisdom within us, and our job is remembering it, not trying to become something different.
And remembering that we are the embodiment of that. And so using this body, using every aspect of our being, our spiritual selves, our mental selves, even our emotional selves and our physical bodies to actually create, to create a better life for us all, to develop our human relations. That's a really important aspect of this as well.
That's right, and then the other terminology that I want to bring up is esotericism or esoteric studies. I mean, the organization I'm with, the School for Esoteric Studies, it's right in our title. And what esoteric studies is the scientific study of these teachings of the ageless wisdom regarding the invisible, subtle world of energies. So it's looking beyond the tangible, what we can see and touch, to the underlying causes, what the basic principles are in our universe.
Well, and when science reports to us, or when science has proven that so much of the universe is actually empty space, is actually subtle, is actually unseen, we realize that, if 0.0000 whatever percentage of that is what we can actually touch and work with, but there's so much more than that. Well, we really would be better, would do ourselves well by getting to know what that is, and how has that empty space, that pure potentiality, actually created this world around us, and how do we actually utilize the fullness of our being, the fullness of what the universe has to offer, which is really a remarkable study. You can understand how it's ageless because it's wowing. If you study just quite simply what's called the Blue Books, which are teachings by a Tibetan Lama named Dwakul, who were brought to the West in collaboration with Alice Bailey. Perhaps some of you have heard of those. There's volumes upon volumes. You would spend your entire life studying these books, even just one book. And so you realize, goodness, this is the wisdom of the ages, really.
Well, it's interesting, Steve. I'm gonna pick you up on something. You talked about empty space. There actually is no empty space.
Yes.
All space is alive. And it may be alive with potentiality, but it's roiling with energy. If we could see, like in Kirlian photography, when we look out at the sky at what we think is just that kind of dead space between the stars, there's just so much going on. And so it's recognizing that we are all part of a gigantic energy field. Every single bit is filled with energy.
Well, just quickly, I was introduced to esotericism through esoteric healing, which is a form of energy medicine, which is a bit like Reiki or a bit like acupuncture, actually closer to acupuncture. And I was in my 20s and had an experience of somebody using esoteric, that I was the client, and somebody performing this work, a practitioner, and closing my eyes and feeling this person working on my subtle system, on my etheric body. I had not heard that term before, but I could feel like it was like I was a chest of drawers, and there were drawers being opened and closed, and I could see colors behind my eyes, and I would open my eyes and just see this person sitting across from me, moving their hands, not touching me at all. And I thought, what is going on? How am I experiencing this? I was in my 20s and I had never experienced energy in that way. I've never experienced my body, that there was this unseen field of energy around me, that just being in close proximity to somebody who knew how to work with that could actually shift my experience as a human being. I left there feeling incredible, and I thought, what was that? And it was really that introduction to, wow, we are so that, as you say, there was lots of space between us, but it was not empty. There was so much potential to work with it, and I was just amazed.
Well, another basic concept, which is, I'll back up a second. I have a friend who talks about this ageless wisdom stuff as woo-woo. And what's amusing to me is that each of these pieces of what she considers as just woo-woo keeps being demonstrated by science to be true. And so one of those aspects is that our cosmos is not deterministic. We've grown up with Newtonian physics, with cause and effect, objectivity, all of that. But our cosmos is probabilistic, and that goes along with the potentiality. At any one time, there are multiple possibilities of what could happen. And it is our choices, how we direct our thought, that whole saying, energy follows thought, how we direct our thought, the choices that we make that determine what of that potentiality precipitates into actuality.
And fantastic, that this has been reported in the Ageless Wisdom for such a long time, and that now science, we're really starting to see science have the capacity, and it is that intention that here is what we are, and human beings, we want to see it, touch it, feel it, we want to prove it, or actually we're curious and we would like to know more. We could look at it that way as well. And so interesting that quantum science and so much of science is actually working with spiritual leaders to really show the ways in which the spirit is organized, and the ways in which this plays out, and that it's quite factual. So the woo-woo, it just seems to be it seems to be somebody that says, hold on a minute, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. I'm going to label it woo-woo. But when you really start looking into the intricacies, and you really start looking into the ways in which that spirit presents in matter, and all of the space in between, it's just a fantastic journey of revelation, and begets more wonder and more excitement and more interest. So Dorothy, we're already at our first break. I hope that's wet the whistle a little bit, and listeners will be right back with more on the Ageless Wisdom.
Are you ready to branch out? Take a leap of faith. Then tune in to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills on TransformationTalkRadio.com every second and fourth Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific to equip, empower, and enlighten yourself. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. So, Get fearlessly ready and get powerfully rooted in your yes to live it up, love it up, and let it go to ignite the life you deserve. Visit GetRootedRadio.com and tune in.
Stuck in a roundabout of dysfunction? Learn how to speak your truth to power with host Dr. Kathy Obear. Create real change with smart tools and smart strategies. No frills, no fluff, just life-changing conversations to help get you where you want to be. Extend your reach and become an agent for real change with Kathy Obear. For more information on Kathy and her work, please visit drkathyobear.com. That's drkathyobear.com.
Did you know that when working with the law of attraction, it's beneficial to share your longings with a supportive tribe who can assist in maintaining accountability and hold the creative space for your desires to manifest? I'm Autumn Seibel, host of Golden Otter Radio, where the metaphysical meets the mainstream. Join me each month at the new and full moon to plant your seeds of abundance, consciously tend to your intentions throughout the lunar phases, then harvest the fruits of your co-creation with the universe in my Lunar Manifestations members-only forum. Your tribe is waiting for you at goldenotter.us.
Are you ready to broadcast your brand ideal with the latest in information technology? Bioresonance software distills your brand ideal or intention and enhances your core internal organizing principle. This has a tremendous impact on your organization's alignment as well as the behavior, satisfaction, and the retention of its employees. Your physical business structure can unfurl, opening up the possibilities of creating an energetic presence for a brand even ahead of its launch. Check out JeanetteWolf.com for more on its signature frequency branding.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back. As always, we like to say a bit about our organizations, two organizations that have come together in collaboration to create, to produce, and bring Spirit Fire Radio to you. Dorothy, a few words about the School for Esoteric Studies.
Yes, thank you, Steve. So the School for Esoteric Studies is an educational nonprofit, and as its name suggests, we are focused on esoteric studies, that scientific study of the teachings of the ageless wisdom and how we can apply it in our everyday lives in service to the common good. We provide training particularly for people who already have a spiritual practice that they want to deepen. And we also provide a context and a coordination of a number of group initiatives. One of the ones that is ongoing right now that you're welcome to join is what we call our annual Subjective Group Conference, which runs through the period that's known as the Three Linked Festivals. That's the full moon of Aries, of which there's 2 this year, which is interesting, and then Taurus and Gemini. And our conference theme this year is From Suffering to Joy, the Science of Redemption. So you're very welcome to join us. You'll find information at esotericstudies.net. You'll also find information there about another initiative, which is intentional intergroup collaboration. That is, rather than just working on our own, that we want to reach out and work with like-minded organizations. This radio program, Spirit Fire Radio, has been a wonderful collaboration with Spirit Fire, which we really appreciate. And if any of you who are listening belong to an organization that would like to collaborate with the school, please take a look at esotericstudies.net and be in touch with us.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Dorothy. And Spirit Fire is also an educational nonprofit, and it really was founded on principles from the Ageless Wisdom. Certainly the idea that we develop our soul and we sort of integrate the personality and the soul and tap into the ways in which we are spiritual beings in this human experience. We do that through meditation, study, and service. Those are sort of the 3 legs of the Ageless Wisdom stool, and those 3 are very important to us, meditation, study, and service. We have created our own meditation practice called the Practice of Living Awareness. It is equal parts a mindfulness practice and a Vipassana or insight practice. It's a 14-week meditation program that we offer for free in cycles online. You can sort of jump in at any time. We make all of these meditations meditations available to you. And we've got a meditation center in Western Massachusetts where we support that practice through meditation retreats and host all sorts of retreats, from sound healing, yoga, really wonderful retreats that all sort of bring those topics to the forefront and allow people to participate and experience them. So check us out at spiritfire.com. And Dorothy, let's continue the conversation. Do you want to pick up where we left off?
Sure. What I want to focus our attention on for a moment is that one of the basic concepts in the Ageless Wisdom is the concept of free will, that we always are able to make choices, and this is an important component of a probabilistic cosmos, because it's those choices, as I mentioned before the break, that precipitate the actuality. And before somebody starts to feel, well, wait a minute, there's things happening to me that I don't like, and I can't prevent them from happening. That is true, but we always have the choice of how we respond. So we can always control that part of our experience. And how we respond is, in thought, we are directing energy towards what it is that we want to bring about ultimately.
And what it is we'd like to create, right? I mean, the world we would like to create. And one aspect of the Ageless Wisdom which I really appreciate, and I have learned so much as a result of diving deep into the Ageless Wisdom, is this idea of continuity of consciousness. And that's related to free will. And, it says that we make choices, and these choices beget results, and really there are consequences, and as you've said, intended and unintended, but that as consciousness continues, and even if we look at it in simple terms of a soul that incarnates again and again and again, what world are we leaving behind? How do the choices we make impact our fellow human beings and their thoughts and their creations? And what kind of world are we creating? This planet Earth, as a stage, as a living being, as being an aspect of this living being, how are we contributing? Are we contributing to its health? Are we contributing to its demise? And it often starts with the choices we make, with our will. How do we use our will? Yeah?
Absolutely. And another aspect of this, for me, is, in the Ageless Wisdom, it says the great heresy is separativeness, is believing that we are separate from others, as opposed to recognizing that we are all part of this one huge energy field, and whatever we do, however we think, however we feel, however we act, affects everyone around us. So it invites us and encourages us to recognize that while people may be different from us in some ways, they are similar to us in others, and we have that connection. And for me, Steve, one of the ways, one of the focuses that helps me with that is related to this continuity of consciousness, and that is a recognition that I have no idea what someone else's sole purpose is.
Yes.
My belief is that that as we go through time, as we are incarnate in a body, and then we are discarnate, we're no longer in the physical body, and then we come back into an incarnation, that the soul sets for us a particular life purpose, which we may or may not actualize. But I don't know what your soul purpose is, and so I have no right to judge how you're doing, because I don't know what you're actually trying to do. And that gives me more patience with people who seem to be quite different from myself.
Beautiful. And it all comes back again to seeing others, yourself, as all being a cooperative aspect of this one life. One thing that always stood out for me in studying texts that are related to the Ageless Wisdom was that they would often talk about the Buddha, and then they would talk about Jesus, and I thought, wow, as a young, I think I started studying in my maybe early, probably my late 30s. That was such a new experience for me to be reading what I considered a spiritual text, and it was mentioning the Buddha and Jesus in the same, in the same page, and I thought, wow, here's just it sounds so simplistic, but there you go, talking about this idea of not creating separation, and that so often that happens with religion, that it says, oh, it's my way and your way is wrong. These are the beliefs that are correct. And anyone who doesn't believe this, well, forget about it. They're on the wrong path. Whereas the Ageless Wisdom said, oh, we have so much to learn from these spiritual teachers, and they actually are all pulling from the same pot. And this is the pot, so we can look at their teachings, we can see how they're related, and even then to realize that the Ageless Wisdom really would talk about mind and heart, and these two wonderful leaders, the Buddha and the Christ, as being pristine examples of mind and heart, and the ways that their teachings work together really illustrate the ways that heart-mind works together. So the teachings themselves were so inspiring to me just in that regard, which was, well, there's no separateness, in any regard, even when we're talking about spirituality or religion, which I really appreciated at that age, being introduced to the Ageless Wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And I think that touches on another aspect of the teachings, which is that the reality is that part of the implication that we're all part of this one energy field, which we could call the one life, is we are not separate from it. In other words, if you want to talk in language of about the spirit or about a God, that is not external to us. That is internal to us. It is part of who we are, and so it's not a matter of us like children looking to a parent, to tell us what to do or to tell us if we've done it correctly. We are all part of that. I'm trying to think of how to say this. We're all part of an energetic field, some of which appears to be more mature or more experienced in terms of how to apply the principles than other parts of it.
Mm. There's a quote I'd love to just say. We're going to go to a break in a second. I wanted to bring it in just I love it so much. Esther Hicks says that the basis of life is freedom, and the purpose of life is joy. And it sort of speaks to everything we've been saying thus far, which is the basis of life is freedom, that really we have the freedom to choose. We have the freedom to, we here as thinking creators, we really can create the world we would like to see, be the change you'd like to see, right? That is the basis of life, that it is freedom. And the purpose of life is joy, which really speaks to as well that allowing somebody, what might be my joy is not your joy, that really this purpose of life is to experience that goodness, experience that holism. When we experience joy, it's sort of like we're beyond time, space. It's as if we've just immersed ourselves into that greater field that you're talking about. We almost become unified with that one, and we experience the fullness. If you've ever experienced joy, you're just all of a sudden immersed in the yesness and in the complete knowing of everything is right here. I have access to it all, and it feels so good. So lovely. On that note, Dorothy, why don't we go to a break, and we'll come right back.
Did you know that all of the shows on the Transformation Radio Network are available as podcasts to stream or download?
Really?
Check us out. Go to transformationradio.fm. We have business shows, spiritual shows, energy healing shows, and pretty much everything in between. Something for everyone, guaranteed to inspire, educate, and transform. We are transforming the world one listener at a time.
Dream on, fly high, and live adventurously on The Laura Meeks Show. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio as host Laura Meeks guides you in finding your unique gifts and bringing them to life. As a certified life coach, speaker, and veteran bomber pilot for the U.S. Air Force, Laura knows how to follow a dream. She is ready to support you so you can dream on, fly high, and live adventurously. For more information on Laura and her work, visit flyhighliving.com.
To find answers to life's questions, you need to look within yourself. Dr. Glenna Rice brings your questionable conversations on Transformation Talk Radio each month. Tune in each month for insight into how you can live up to your full potential. Dr. Glenna is a physical therapist, certified Access Consciousness, and Access Body Class facilitator. How does it get any better than this? For more information on Dr. Glenna Rice and her work, visit glennarice.com.
Living Lighter Radio with Jason and Patricia. We have an ecosystem approach to your life. Tune in weekly every Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio as we, Jason and Patricia, discuss what's truly holding you back. We offer you the tools you need to reach your goals and at the same time be living lighter. For more information about Living Lighter, visit www.livinglighter.org.
Welcome back, listeners. Dorothy, you said you had a few words. Do you want to pick up right where we left off?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's interesting, you were talking about the purpose of life is joy. In the Ageless Wisdom, one of the themes is that joy is the keynote of our universe. And there are several very beautiful passages about the fact that a change is coming, and I think it refers to the shift from the Piscean to the Aquarian age. A shift is coming from suffering to joy. That's why our subjective group conference is focused on that this year, and that the idea that we only grow through pain, the idea of the suffering on the cross, that imagery is really no longer useful, and it's actually not helpful at all. That rather than, having to react to something painful in order to move forward, that we can proactively choose a positive experience. And I think, for example, the growth of positive psychology is a good illustration of this, because until now, if you look at the psychological literature, almost all of it has been focused on the negative emotions, and not on the positive. So we are focused, if you want to join us, as I mentioned before, listeners, if you want to join us in thinking through this shift, that's what the School for Esoteric Studies is focused on in this year's subjective group conference.
It's so liberating, right, Dorothy? Can't you just feel that if you could just let go of that old sort of construct of, well, the greater the pain, the greater the lesson. And you go, why the pain at all in the first place? Can we just let that go? Not even focus on it for one bit. And that's so much I just love Esther Hicks. That's so much of her gig. It's called the law of attraction, which is, let's start off at a high keynote and make sure we maintain that marker. We sustain that level of positivity and of openness and of co-creation and collaboration, that we keep the vibration high. She's all about that high vibration and trying to keep it there and being aware of when we move below that marker. I just think it's a beautiful way of living. So may it be so.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a couple of myths that I think are important for us to touch on in this discussion, Steve. One of them is this whole idea, when you're talking about a high marker, that the soul or the spirit or spiritual life is more important than matter or living here. And the reality is that spirit and matter are two ends of an energetic continuum of how energy expresses. You can think of matter as spirit at its, quote, lowest vibrational point, and spirit is matter at its highest vibrational point, but they are connected to each other. And it's not a matter, I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I just want to really underscore this point. It's not a matter of our ignoring the body or setting the body aside or seeing it as a lower nature or something that's bad or that we have to move away from. If that was the case, why are we here in incarnation? We're here in incarnation in order to live out the reality that we are each unique and yet we are interconnected. We are all part of a whole, remembering that that is actually who we are. And so that whole continuum is important to us.
Well, anybody that's ever seen a photograph of Mother Teresa, that vehicle, those eyes, and just seeing her using her hands to hold another being, you realize just how important this vehicle is, this body. We are all of that. And so I agree, this idea of, oh, I'm a spiritual person and, I'm not really worried about, this idea of giving up on the material world altogether just to be a spiritual being. That's the Buddha came down from under the tree and said, well, it's about the middle path, right? It's about the space in between. It can't be one extreme or the other. You've got to find that middle way so that you can learn to have the breadth of experience of all of it combined. Yeah, very nice. Indeed.
Another myth that I think is so critical for us to address because it affects how we are together, and this relates back to last week with the discussion that we had of the organizational energy of the seventh ray, is that the myth is that we are driven by competition. But the reality is that we grow and thrive through cooperation, particularly when we cooperate for the common good. And we have, there's a biologist, Lynn Margulis, who has done a lot of scientific research in this area, and she talks about how we actually develop and thrive through networking. If you think of how our body works, if each of the organs in our body was in competition for each other, for blood supply or oxygen or whatever, we would be a mess, and we'd be dead probably. And in fact, when we have parts of the body that are competing with another part, we have illness, usually fatal illness. So our whole composition is one of cooperation, of working together, finding ways to maximize the contribution that each of us can make in our own individual ways.
Oh, beautifully said, Dorothy. Thank you. I love a quote by Desmond Tutu. I'd love to read it just because I think it speaks to what you're saying. It says, a person who is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good. For he or she has proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she belongs in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated or diminished or treated as if they were less than who they are. So this whole idea of building others up by realizing that, when we're in competition as a way of putting each other down, that it really just doesn't, we have to lift all of ours, we all have to be lifted up and lean into that and realize that, wow, as I support you, as I make you feel great about who you are, that's really helping me. It's making the world more positive. Indeed. But so quickly we don't, we often live in an age where we just want to criticize and differentiate. And that's so much, again, of this idea of matter, of this idea of boundaries and separation. It's like just because we can look at a table over there and a chair over there and see how they're different, well, okay, but we're all part of this same one creation.
Well, think what the world would be like if it was all tables.
Yeah.
Or if it was all chairs, right? I mean, we need the variety. We need what it is that each one can contribute. And we need to remember that energetically, whatever happens to someone else and whatever someone else is doing affects us.
Yep, indeed. So, Dorothea, how about a bit on meditation? because I know we just got a couple segments left, and it's such an important part, just to tap into it for a moment, because a really big aspect of the ageless wisdom is this idea of integrating the personality and the soul so that the personality can become a vehicle of the soul. And there's quite a bit in the literature about what is the personality. You know, it's really this composite of our physical body and our emotions and our thought forms that we've got stored up in our brain. But that, as you mentioned before about the soul's purpose, everybody has a soul purpose. And I find that one, meditation is quite helpful in generating the observer mind. And that observer is one way to sort of clear these distortions that we find in our personality body, often within our lower mind thoughts that we think again and again and again, that sort of are creating distortions in our being, or emotional responses that aren't serving, or even ways in which our physical body is getting in the way. And meditation is a way of can be a way of clarifying those vehicles and integrating them, especially through developing the observer mind, which is a really big aspect of meditation. This idea that we are Homo sapiens sapiens. We are species that are aware, but we're also aware that we are aware. And within that awareness, we tap into this greater field of awareness. And actually, we realize that we are greater than certain aspects of ourselves. And I find that it's certainly meditation training is a big part of the ageless wisdom. And so just to bring that up, I wonder if you have a few words on meditation.
Well, I think there are two things to me that are really critical, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, which is that, to me, while we go through specific meditation practices to develop that clarity, that ultimately it really is a 24/7 attitude of energetic clarity. But one of the myths, I think, is that it has to be done a certain way or in a certain space, or you have to sit a certain way, or you have to say certain things, or it needs to be long. And in my experience, none of that is true. You can meditate anywhere, anytime. You can meditate for 1 minute, for 10 minutes, for an hour, whatever it is that serves your purpose. However, to me, one of the critical elements of a meditation practice is that in the process of meditating, we generate an energy field, and that energy field is not for us. That energy field, as we are closing out the meditation, needs to be sent out in a focused way for the common good. In whatever, there are different schools of how that's framed, but it's not just, this is not a feel-good exercise. It's actually a service that we do for the common good.
And in the feel good, I just want to bring up just one very basic point. So many people think that meditation is about checking out. It's just this leisure time where you're going to turn your brain off and I'm going to sort of take a mental vacation here. Or actually, I'm just going to turn the switch off, and all of a sudden my being is just non-existent for until that bell rings, and I'm going to wake up and I'm out of meditation. Whereas it's quite the opposite. It's actually a checking in, that meditation is actually a tapping in. And that is when, we really can learn to generate and be creative even in our meditations, which is, as you're saying, sending that energy out, that we've actually established a really fine mental energy, and actually working with those energies and putting them out into the world with clear intention. The mind is a very powerful thing, and to start to get to know the mind and see the mind as a tool and working with it in ways, especially meditative ways, that are for the greater good is a very positive thing. That it is so much more than this idea of, I'm just going to stop thinking and check out for a while. Not that at all. One last thing, Dorothy, I'd love to mention just before we go to a break, because I find it interesting about meditation. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who I love so much, find him to be so inspiring. He gives the definition of mindfulness as the awareness that arises as we pay attention moment to moment to moment without judgment. And so I find it so interesting that word judgment and without judgment would be even in his definition of mindfulness, which is really sort of really coming to know and coordinate. I think my interpretation is really the personality bodies that then move on to an insight or Vipassana meditation, but that without judgment, it just shows the impact of separateness and of judgment that it has, not only on our capacity to tap into awareness, but on our everyday lives of the ways in which criticism and judgment play their part. So really a time to exercise not judging oneself, not judging what's happening, can be really taken into practice with meditation. Dorothy, we're already at a break. I talked us right to a break. So listeners, we'll be right back after these words. Hi, I'm Steve Kramer of Spirit Fire Radio, and I believe that meditation changes everything. It leads us in the direction of greater well-being, and that's a fact. I struggled with meditation for years. I understood the principles, but I found it hard to incorporate them into my everyday life. Spirit Fire's meditation practice changed that. It's called the Practice of Living Awareness, and it's taught in 14 steps. These are 14 tools that I can use in any moment, on and off the cushion. Steps like smile, flow, and ground of being support my clarity of mind while I'm navigating the ups and downs of modern life. That's why it's called the Practice of Living Awareness. If you'd like to add meditation to your daily experience, the Practice of Living Awareness is free, online, and it's suited for any level of practitioner. Visit spiritfire.com for more information. And be sure to check out Spirit Fire's meditation retreats in Western Massachusetts. It's all there at spiritfire.com.
Are you ready to embrace your essence and the magic of who you are? Let me, Emily Perkins, hold your hand and walk with you as we go treasure hunting for the gold that lies within you. Tune in to Love Living Radio every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information, visit LoveLivingHolistics.com.
Welcome back, listeners. It's great to be back. This is our last segment, Dorothy, of our last show. Wow. I feel like we should, ching-ching with a 2 cups of tea. But we're going to wrap this show up with talking about the importance of service. It is really such a keynote, right, Dorothy, of the Ageless Wisdom. I mean, it boils down to world servers and really living each day with purpose and an understanding that we are really a part of a greater whole, and seeing every aspect, the earth, each human being as a part of that, and working with it, creating with it, and having positivity in our move toward this greater whole. There's a quote that I love by I can never say his name right. Rabindranath Tagore. Yes, he's a wonderful writer. And he says, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, I realized that service was joy."
That's very, very beautiful.
And I love this idea of I awoke, and I awoke, meaning I feel like that's I incarnated, right? And saw life, that life was service. And then I acted. And that says so much, right, Dorothy? I acted. Mm-hmm. And behold, I realized that service was joy. Because, hey, you might realize that life is service, but if you're not doing anything with it, then yeah, where's the joy?
Well, that's right. And if we think about joy as the keynote of the universe, which we were talking about before, and that service is actually how we live out our truth, that we are all part of the one life. It's how we greet each other with respect and compassion. Then yes, service is joy. And I think it's important to remember in this context, we're not talking about service as volunteering, as doing things that we hope will be thanked for. It is really being our true self.
and doing the work to keep that self true, right? And what do we mean by true? You often talk about clearing the distortions, and that has to do with, we've had so many topics over the last few years. Right action, right speech, goodwill, harmlessness, compassion. I think of all those, forgiveness. We talked about these ways in which we can bring clarity to our being by really paying attention to these concepts, and that can be a service in and of itself. Which is doing the good work on ourselves first. So when we go out into the world, we're not creating harm or divisiveness or separateness.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've talked before a number of times about our moral compass, our internal sense, that still small voice that says, this is the right thing to do or this is not the right thing to do. And I think it's important to remember that every thought that we allow, every action that we take, either reinforces that still small voice or starts to undermine it. And through service, this is how we reinforce who we are morally and ethically.
Beautiful. Yes, indeed.
There's a quote from, you mentioned the Blue Books before.
Yeah.
Steve, there's a quote from there on service that I'd like to read. And the Tibetan writes, "The true service is the spontaneous outflow of a loving heart and an intelligent mind. It is the result of being in the right place and staying there. It is produced by the inevitable inflow of spiritual force and not by strenuous physical plane activity. It is the effect of individuals being what they truly are, a divine soul, and not by the studied effect of their words or deeds." So it's about being.
Yes. So beautiful. I appreciate that, Dorothy. It almost it makes me think, as we're about to wrap up this show and our season together. I love that quote was brought forward at the end. I think of our collaboration and our working together and ways in which there has been spontaneous outflow by embodying our loving hearts and intelligent minds that both of us possess, and really working together. That those have been we've got very different minds, you and I, and this whole idea of collaboration has just created something really so wonderful. And I do think there's something to being at the right place and staying there. What does that say to you? I'm curious your take on that.
Well, I think it's I think of it in terms of imagery. Like I think of taking a camera and bringing it into focus where there's that clarity, and then that's where we need to be, that's where we need to stay, and not letting things get all fuzzy and unclear again.
We've talked about point of tension before, right? And it's that. Mm-hmm. On the last show, we had a really wonderful conversation about markers. It's that idea of realizing, right here is a very magnetic space, and staying there and allowing that to build. That happens quite a bit in meditation, and it's happened quite a bit with our show, I think, as well. Not to keep bringing it back to the show, but there is something about that creative collaboration, which is you say, this is good, and then working with it, staying there, keeping that, as it says, that momentum going. Is a very important thing. There's a quote by Joseph Campbell that he says, "Don't be afraid to follow your bliss. Doors will open where you didn't know they were going to be." So I think it's this also idea of being in the right place and staying there, and then allowing, seeing what transpires. How do the boundaries expand once we know we're in the right place, once we know that we're serving the energy of our soul and letting that power of the soul be magnetic and see what comes to you, work with it, and do right by it. Very important.
Well, and I think it's while the Tibetan talks about being in the right place and staying there, but just before that, he talks about the spontaneous outflow. And I think, taking it back to the point of tension, in order to act at all, we need to build up a certain tension. But the tension isn't just to sit there. The tension is then to be released in a purposeful way. So whatever imagery works for you, for example, anyone that's done archery, if you have the bow and it's just the string is flaccid, nothing's going to happen. If you pull it back, you have to pull it back far enough that when you release it, the arrow has enough velocity that it will actually go where you want it to go. If you pull it back too far, you just keep pulling, you'll break the bow eventually. You won't achieve any actual practical positive outcome.
I think of a guitar.
You can think of it,
like when you a guitar.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think of it like when you tune a guitar. It's like you've found just that right tension so that it makes beautiful music. Too loose, it won't play. Too tight, it will pop. It will break. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Dorothy, we're about to wrap this up, so I hope we have been making some beautiful music to our listeners' ears, not to be cheeky, but thank you. Just to thank you on behalf of Spirit Fire and the School for Esoteric Studies for making this just such an exciting adventure. We set out to explore these universal spiritual principles was really in our and guide people towards purposeful living through those, and I feel we've accomplished that. Would you say, Dorothy?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I hope that we also stand as a good model of two people, two organizations coming together with a common purpose, but not the same. Right? We each have different activities. We have somewhat different audiences that we work with. We ourselves, you and I, Steve, have commonalities and we have differences. And hopefully we're an example of how those bringing together both the commonalities and the differences enriches our joint experience.
And may it be so for all of our listeners in all of your endeavors. There are ways in which that works, small and large. So, happy to be at least offering an example of that out into the world. Dorothy, it's been a delight. Love you very much, and so thankful and grateful for the School for Esoteric Studies. And listeners, thank you for being with us for this whole season and for both seasons. I've just learned so much, and it's been such a joy.
And perhaps you can tell people where they can find previous programs, Steve?
For sure. You can find them at Transformation Talk Radio by just typing in Spirit Fire Radio as a search, or at spiritfireradio.com. And goodness, Dorothy, over 100 shows? Is that possible? 52 weeks to a year in 2 years? Wow. So
yes.
Quite a lot of beautiful material there. So yes, listeners, please check out our archives, and certainly both of our websites. There's really so much to offer at the School for Esoteric Studies, which is esotericstudies.net, yes?
Yes.
And spiritfire.com. All right, listeners, that's it. It's a wrap. It's been great to be with you, and great to be with you too, Dorothy. Thanks for sharing your wisdom as always.
And I thank you, Steve, for the opportunity to work with you and to be with our listeners.
All right, and thanks to our producer, Carter, been with us for quite some time. Thanks so much,
yes.
And adios. Be well.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.